You ready to start talking about
I guess.
Rugrats?
Can I use this paper towel that was under your computer?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have a paper towel under your computer?
I don't know. I think he gave it to me with the tater tots.
You ate tots and didn't even need a napkin?
No, I didn't.
Damn, you're a professional.
I'm a professional tot eater.
Are we gonna go?
Yeah.
Ruin my childhood.
Thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Mike.
Are you selling a car? What is going on?
I am selling us.
Are you okay? Did you have caffeine? I'm Kat.
That is Kat. I did have caffeine earlier. I did have some coffee earlier today, but it's been hours. I'm just an energetic person, and I enjoy podcasting.
0% APR.
It's my cash settlement, and I want it now.
Oh, God.
Anyway, we talk about TV shows and movies from the 90s and whatnot when we were kids, and we decide if they stand the test of time. And we're going to be talking about one of the most classic TV shows of our generation. What are we talking about today, Miss Katrina?
Sorry, I was trying not to laugh. Rugrats.
What do you remember about Rugrats?
I love Rugrats.
So did I.
I was homeschooled, so I finished my schoolwork hours before most kids. And I could be pretty luxurious with my breaks and decide when I wanted to watch TV. I watched a lot of Rugrats.
What are some episodes you remember? What was your favorite episode?
I think my favorite episode is one of the early ones where I've always just kind of assumed that they didn't have as big of a budget for that episode, so they could only afford a couple voices, and they use this as a filler, because I think it's only Tommy and his parents, maybe even just his mother in the episode. It's when
he's sick.
It's like it's a fever dream episode, and something about it just felt so much more like childhood than anything else on that show.
I remember that episode. I remember probably the episode I remember the most is the one where they go to this like Western themed park, and there's a bully, and they end up like popping. She puts gum in people's hair, and then Tommy at the end like pops a bubble, and then the bully gets bubbles in her hair, and like everything is good. So I remember that episode.
An eye for an eye.
Yeah,
good life lessons.
I remember an episode where they get locked in a toy store and they get scared. And I remember an episode with Grandpa and Tommy going to the grocery store, and Tommy really wants to get Reptar cereal.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
And those are like the episodes that kind of stick in my head. And then, the rhino episode when Angelica convinces Chuckie that he's turning into a rhino.
It's a good one.
And those, I just remember
the moose
a
one.
Few episodes. Moose.
It's so weird. And I think we just watch them so much that we have these little glimpses of memories the way we do with real life. I feel like Rugrats is just kind of sprinkled into my childhood experience in a really deep way.
Well, what's interesting, so this was one of the first Nickelodeon cartoon shows. It was like this, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy, like all premiered at the same time. Like,
and looking back on them, they did so few seasons compared to how much I felt like I watched them.
Right.
Which tells me they were on a heavy repeat.
So we talked about Doug, that it was only like 2 seasons that were on Nickelodeon. And they just played over and over and over again. And also each episode was 2 smaller episodes, so it made it seem like there was a lot more out there than there was. Mm-hmm. This show is the same way, that each episode is 2 mini ones. And I looked up, without looking at individual episodes, I looked up the years that this ran. And so it was like season 1 and season 2 were like 1991, 1992. Season 3 was like 94. And then like season 4 like didn't go until like 96. So there were certain times where there were like 3 or 4 year gaps between seasons on this show.
Oh, wow.
So where they were just replaying it. And it wasn't until 1998 when the movie came out. And the way I kind of look at this is prior to the movie, before Dill Pickles, the youngest baby brother.
Right.
I look at it as pre-Dill Pickles.
Yeah, I feel like everything after the movie was just kind of extra. The animation was slightly different.
Yeah, they cleaned it up. It was almost like The Simpsons when they did the movie. I
didn't really like it.
No, I didn't like it as much either.
And I was still a kid.
Yeah, 1998. We were 10 years old when the movie came out. So it was still like within our like age demographics to an extent. So, but yeah, for whatever reason, it just felt different. So we're
like when Doug moved.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking when we get to watching episodes, we'll probably stick to like seasons 1 through 3 before there was that gap. But we'll go through, and we've got a couple comments from listeners, so maybe that will shape our viewing decisions. But I've got a couple comments. You wanna read some?
Yeah, how about you do the first one?
So Lecta said, I watched it all the time, but the only episode I really remember in any detail is the one where Tommy decides he would rather be naked like his dog Spike. And then there's a sweaty emoji, and it says, Nakey is good, Nakey is free, Nakey is Nakey. Not my favorite episode, but clearly left an impression. Ha ha!
Nice. This one is from Brendan Dora. It says, on the surface, fun cartoon about kids. Bubbling underneath, a veritable cornucopia of existential horror. I agree.
So you know the famous fan theory around the show, right?
No.
So there's a very widely accepted fan theory.
Widely accepted by whom?
By like people on the internet. I've been reading about this for years, but there is a fan theory that
It's QAnon, isn't it?
no. There's a theory that none of the kids are real except for Angelica,
What?
and that Chuckie died because his mom died. And everything. And the reason that Charles, Chuckie's dad, is such a nervous wreck is because he lost his son and wife. So
It's kind of dark because Chuckie did die.
What was that?
Christine Cavanaugh?
Oh, yeah.
I don't like this theory.
So one of the theories is that Chuckie died as a baby, and that's why he's so scared, and the son and the dad is so scared. They say that if you look at Phil and Lil's mom, she has like the feminist symbol on her sweatshirt. And so the theory is that she actually got an abortion and Angelica heard or overheard part of it. And the reason that Phil and Lil are twins is because she never knew what the sex of the baby was. So she imagined it as both. And then the other one was that Tommy died or was a stillborn baby or something like that.
Did they just go as dark as possible with all of this?
So yeah, the theory is that she just kind of imagined all these things because she didn't have any companions as a little kid. And eventually they had Rugrats all grown up where they're supposed to be like tweens, and the theory was expanded to say that she just is like a schizophrenic and is picturing them older.
That's so dumb.
Yeah. But yeah, existential dread.
Yikes.
I got one from Leah Press, and it says, probably the Passover episode is my most memorable. Not a lot of shows at that time celebrated Jewish holidays, particularly kid shows. It was super creative how they wrote it, and it's always nice if someone asked me what Passover was. I could reference that episode, and kids my age would know what I was talking about.
Aw, warm fuzzies.
I remember that Passover episode. You had the grandparents on the mother's side were like old country Jewish.
I'm remembering the grandparents now.
I think they did a Passover and Hanukkah episode.
Yeah. I feel like a lot more cartoon characters were Jewish than actual live action TV shows.
Well, you look at Hey Arnold. We covered Hey Arnold, and there was a very obviously Jewish character in that.
Doug is Jewish.
I think what it comes down to, like, I don't know if this is offensive to say or not. I don't think it is, but I'm not trying to be offensive if it does offend anyone. But I think it's because with cartoons, because it's animated, because it's all voice work, you can be over the top. You can be a little bit more stereotypical.
So the stereotypical Jewish voices.
You get those, very obviously stereotypes. So I think that's maybe why they can get away with it in cartoon, and it doesn't feel as serious, and people can teach kids. Like,
I guess it's kind of like, I hate to say this, but it's the way inoculation works. Like, if you just expose people to things that are different than their experience, gradually over time, they will subconsciously be more accepting of it.
Well, and once again, I don't necessarily know if this is the place for this, but people are taught to hate people and to not understand people. So
they really are.
If you're presented with all kinds of culture as a kid, that's why Sesame Street's great. Mm-hmm. You don't hate people, but you're taught to hate people. But if you see Jewish and you see black characters and everything intermingling with your main characters, unfortunately most of the time the main character is still the white character, but it still is normal. So I think it's great that
it's so interesting how like you and I think of this as a good thing because it's like part of childhood education to be exposed to different cultures, and yet if we were leaning a different way, we would be looking at this as brainwashing.
Well, and I'm not going to get into it, but when I was working retail still, I remember in the break room once, some guy who I worked with was a regular employee, like some TV show came on that had a gay character, and he went on this rant and was talking about how his daughter's no longer allowed to watch the show, and it was like some Cartoon Network show. And I was like, dude, you're wrong. You're a bigot.
Yeah.
Like, what if your daughter turns out to be gay or bi and everything, and you're telling her she can't watch this specifically because of this? She's either going to grow up hating herself if she is that way, or she's going to grow up to be a bigot like you.
Nail on the head.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's
It's
important to have this representation. So I'm really glad that Leah had this representation when she was younger.
Plus, I mean, they're cartoons. Like, how many different colored people are in cartoons?
Yeah. Look at like Doug. We've talked about they had purple, green,
So we've
yellow.
established that animation is the superior storytelling format.
Yeah, if you want to talk
Blowing
about
this
inclusion,
thing wide open.
Yeah, if
Should we actually watch the show at some point?
Yeah, let's go watch it. Okay, we're back. We watched 3 episodes of Rugrats. We watched the pilot, as we always do. And I guess I'll just give a real quick synopsis of the pilot episode. It's Tommy's first birthday, and we get introductions to Phil, Lil, Chuckie, all the adults in the family, except for Angelica's mom, which is weird. You get Angelica's dad, but not her mom, who becomes a bigger part of the series later on. And it's just about them trying to eat dog food because they think they'll turn into dogs if they eat dog food. And meanwhile, all the adults are fighting because
They
the party doesn't go well.
fantasize about the freedom of being a dog.
Yep. And it's, I'm just going to say up front, like, it was a really fun episode. Like, it was the longest one. It was, 22 minutes of one story. But overall, it was fun. Do you have anything to talk about on this pilot episode?
I think, okay, so this was the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Did they air a different pilot for a while?
So in 2001, they released an unaired pilot that was used to pitch it to the studio, but they never actually aired that one until 10 years later.
Got it.
So that's not the one we watched. We watched the one that was actually aired in the 90s.
I love the music.
It's really good.
The theme music is classic. It's amazing. The music in this episode, like, it just establishes how good it's going to be for the entire series. And it's so distinct.
It is.
Like, you could take any random piece of music just from this first episode and play a clip of it, even though someone may not have heard it for 25 years. And they could be like, is that Rugrats?
Yeah.
Like, they might have, they know it's not the theme song, but they recognize it as Mark Mothersbaugh. Is it Mothersbaugh or Mothersbaugh?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
But no, it definitely is, from the theme music to all the interludes to the...
And it changes with the story. Like when Dee Dee picks up Tommy and he grabs her earring, the music shifts with it.
Yeah.
And it's part of the story.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It gets, it becomes like a darker tone, and as he's like yanking our ears, the music goes womp, womp, kind of thing. Yeah, no, it's really good.
I love it.
And what's interesting is, while we were looking for episodes to watch, we were scrolling through, and I think at the top of the episode, we probably pointed out 4, 5, 6 episodes total. But then as we were going through and reading the synopses for each episode, trying to decide, every single one was like, oh, I remember that one.
Yeah.
I remember that one. Oh my God, that one. And there were so many we wanted to
fun.
watch. It was almost impossible to pick which ones we were going to watch. So we ended up just watching the pilot. And then we just kind of picked one that we brought up at the top of the episode, and then one random one that you saw and got excited about. But the pilot episode, what I thought was interesting was, as I was watching it, there were so many things that they would say that reminds me of like reoccurring jokes that popped up later. So there's a point where Dee Dee is trying to get Tommy to eat, and he doesn't want to eat because he wants to eat the dog food, and he doesn't want to eat the baby food. And she pulls down a book, and I remembered, like, oh, Dr. Lipschitz. And they don't even say his name in the first episode.
And it's so obviously making fun of Freud.
Yeah.
There's so much humor in this show that when I think about it, or when we were just skimming through all these episodes, I was like, oh, that's really dark and very clever.
Well, it's
stuff that was way over my head as a kid. And I still remember being just as entertained by the show.
Me too. And I remember going through, and we didn't read every comment we got, but I had a couple comments bring up some of the stuff with Grandpa, how he references like porn movies and Russian roulette and stuff like that. And he talks about women sexually all the time throughout the series. Now that, like, as soon as somebody pointed it out, like, this show had some very, not like hard adult humor, but enough in there for like a parent walking by could go, heh.
Yeah.
And it's also really smart how you have these babies who don't. It's hard to think to. How do I want to say this? I think as a writer, it would be very hard to write a show like this where you're telling it from the perspective of babies who are listening to adults who these babies speak full, complete sentences when it's them leading the story.
I think Brendan hit the nail on the head when he said existential horror.
Yeah, because they understand what the adults are saying to an extent, and sometimes they just mishear one letter or one word, and it changes it entirely, and they just run with it. And it's like, how do you write something like that? I think it's incredible that you write something that can be understood as an adult, but you also have to write it in such a way that you can understand how a child would misinterpret that and then run with the misinterpretation.
And at the same time, there are these things that happen that are out of spy films and Bond movies that are just so funny. Like in the first episode, Tommy reaches underneath his high chair tray and he's got a screwdriver that he's taped there previously.
And he uses the screw, like we see it in a couple other episodes that we watch. He's using it to break open the baby gate. Like this screwdriver is like a Swiss Army knife that one tool works with everything. It's incredible.
His dad, Stu, is an inventor. He invents toys specifically.
Yep.
And that sets up the whole series to have all these shenanigans with his inventions, but it also establishes why Tommy is actually like a superior inventor to his father, because he figures out all these tricks and all these little mechanisms that get the kids into trouble throughout the course of the show.
Well, what's funny is Chuckie is actually pretty mechanical as well. It's always him, Tommy, and Chuckie who are the one manipulating things. And Chuckie's supposed to be a little bit older. Chuckie's 2. Mm-hmm. Phil and Lil are a couple months older than Tommy, and Tommy just turned 1 at this point, and Angelica's 3. Stu couldn't figure out how to get his hovercraft that he built Tommy for his first birthday to work. But Chuckie was able to get it to work and was controlling it really well until Phil and Lil got involved and tried to take over. So Chuckie's a pretty good mechanical engineer, I guess, as well. At the top of the episode, I brought up that fan theory that Tommy actually died. Part of it, now that we're talking about Stu being an inventor, they say that's why Stu is inventing things, because he never got an opportunity to buy toys for his child, so now he's just creating toys to fill in that void. Yeah, it's super dark.
Okay, but honestly, like, you could just say they're vampires. Now let's examine the series and you'll find concept that they are vampires. Like, you're gonna find what you're looking for.
Right. So one of the things I was impressed with, I remember we're supposed to think that Stu is not a very good inventor. Like, all of his stuff always breaks. But you look, the hovercraft did work until the kids crashed it. And he also had this, like, really elaborate doorbell system that had this, like, jack-in-the-box thing pop out of the wall. It's like, doorbell, doorbell, doorbell. And then it also had, like, a functioning intercom with a TV that popped, like, a little CRT TV popped out of the wall by the door. So Angelica and Drew could see Stu in the basement. So, like, he clearly knows what he's doing. Like, he has an engineering degree of some kind, I'm sure.
I love that shows did this kind of thing, though, because Hey Arnold was kind of like that, too. Had that inventor
he had all his gadgets.
Contraptions. And I made a lot of weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, these shows taught me to take apart all the old junk in the garage and Frankenstein it together into something non-functioning.
So there are a few things that you can start to piece together. Like, you can recognize that Grandpa is a little bit older based on some of the other episodes we watched, and he probably went through, like, the Great Depression and isn't used to having money, because in this episode, the very beginning, Stu gets baby food on his shirt. And then he mentions, like, it's supposed to be like an Armani shirt. They call it something else. But it's supposed to be a riff on Armani. And he talks about how he spent like $90 on this Armani shirt, and it's his favorite shirt. And Grandpa was just like, you spent $90 on a shirt? And then in a future episode, he's like blown away that Dee Dee spent $15 on an antique in another episode that we watched. So I think it's interesting. Like, we can see that Stu and Dee Dee are doing well enough that they own a house. They can run a business out of their garage and be comfortable. And they could still afford designer clothing.
And Dee Dee's family is a bunch of immigrants.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, so I looked it up to see where this takes place. And apparently it does take place in California, because there's an episode where they go to the post office and it has the California flag flying at the post office. So they live in California. They have a basement. They have a multi-bedroom house. they wear designer clothing. They're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So good for Stu and
Good
Dee
for
Dee.
them.
Yeah.
If the house has a basement in California, it was probably like pre-1920.
Yeah, for sure. And they end up having another baby in California at the end of the series. They're doing good. They're doing good.
Good times.
Other than that, like, I mean, this episode, it's pretty entertaining. They get out. They're
We get
constantly
some good exposition too.
Yeah, they try to get some dog food throughout. They end up getting it.
We learn a lot about the characters.
You do. You get
all of the characters.
You get a little bit about everybody. Like
everyone but Charlotte,
yeah,
Angelica's mom, and I think her lack of being in this episode also kind of introduces us to the concept of that character.
Yeah. I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, they ultimately get the dog food and nothing happens, but they just start pretending to be dogs and they're all howling and scratching, pretending they have fleas. And all the parents are fighting because the party just falls apart. And, no puppeteers show up for the puppet show. So Drew and Stu do the puppet show and they start fighting about childhood trauma. And then everyone starts arguing about the cake being a healthy cake. And then the cake falls on the ground and all these different things. So the adults are fighting and then they just bond over the kids being adorable, thinking they're dogs.
Well, and they kind of team up and hijack the walkie-talkies.
Oh, that's right. That was fun.
It was a baby monitor that they turned into a walkie-talkie.
Walkie-talkies, yeah.
Yeah.
But
good episode.
It was fun. All right. So the next episode we watched was from season 3. It was the Mysterious Mr. Friend and Home Movies.
Stu's Cinema Dimostic.
So this was the episode that we were just scrolling through and you're like, oh my God, Home Movies. That's one of my favorite
Home
episodes.
Movies, it's so weird.
So why don't you just give us the highlight reel of this episode? Tell us what it's about.
So everyone's being like a total jerk to Stu about his home movies. No one really wants to watch them. He can't quite get the projector to work. All the adults are just like not having a good time. So the kids sneak off because these people are really bad at watching their children.
They are.
Like spectacularly bad at it. And they're in Angelica's house. And they go into the office and they take like an entire ream of copy paper and just start drawing all over it. And telling their own stories because Angelica has hijacked the situation as she tends to do. And we just get this amazing, like alternate animation style for most of the episode because we're seeing the kids' different drawing styles and their different stories. And they're all wildly different scenarios based on the child character's personality. So we get to see Angelica's version of reality where she's like this giant Pac-Man monster with legs stomping on
her
everyone.
Ponytails.
And then we get to see a little bit of Chuckie's like obsession with Tommy as a hero.
And his just like existential dread and how his life is depressing and it's always cloudy and rainy unless he's with Tommy.
Everything's scary.
Yeah.
It's adorable. And at one point, Tommy starts drawing and he's like, I don't have all of my motor skills yet.
Well, and that's the thing that I think is great because it's like that's not something a child would say or even understand. Like that is a joke for adults and older children. And I think it's interesting that the show doesn't talk down to children. And it has, like, Leah brought it up with the Hanukkah episode or the Passover episode. And they have things about fear. They have things about race in this show.
And then we get the random
down.
joke, like at the beginning of this episode, Boris, Dee Dee's father, is like so upset about watching these home movies that he like picks up the phone and he's like, "Hello, Dr. Kevorkian."
Yes.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, and
We're
to be
getting,
fair,
like human euthanasia jokes.
and that's not something as a kid I knew. And I thought when I heard that joke, I was like, "Holy crap!"
I felt smart when I was like 12 and figured out that Lipschitz was like
Freud
making fun of Freud.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and what's funny about the Kevorkian thing is like I kind of get where Boris was coming from because the home movies that they were watching, I remember seeing people do home movies like this where they're filming things that aren't important. Like, oh, here's us packing for the vacation.
Right.
Here's us loading the car for vacation. Here's us locking the door before vacation kind of thing. And everyone's like, oh my God. But yeah, the kids' drawings were fun. I really did like Chuckie drew Tommy as a superhero. And I looked up a few things. And the reason that Tommy is always portrayed as brave and heroic, and this is from the creators, is that Tommy was a preemie. And so he has that fighting spirit.
Anywhere?
I don't think they established it in the show. I think it's just something that the creators have said in interviews that because the children were based off children of friends and family members. So yeah, Tommy was a preemie, and he has that fighting spirit, which is why he's brave and whatnot. So good on Tommy. But yeah, this was a fun episode. Not a lot really happened. There wasn't really any major plot other than them just us seeing the world through the lens of their eyes, how they see the world. And I thought that was really fun. Should we move on to Mr. Friend?
Oh, Mr. Friend is so good.
It was a great episode. I think this might be the favorite one that we watched for me, the little segment. And I didn't remember it until right as it started when we first see the little doll. But essentially this episode is Stu has this, once again, an amazing invention. Like this is this doll. It's about the same size as the baby's, a little smaller. It has a motion sensor, an infrared heat tracker. It had like a little CD-ROM in there that had 200 phrases that were just randomized.
I'm begging you, hire a writer.
And yeah, some of the phrases were bad, but they had like fully articulation. It could respond to the baby's movement. It was like something that he could honestly sell to the military and make millions. Like it was basically like
terrifying,
like Chuckie, the 2019 Chuckie movie, right, where it's just like a doll with AI in it.
Mecha Chuckie.
Yeah, it's insane, but like it's a terrifying episode. Like he just drops this doll in with the kids. It creeps them out. They keep hiding the doll. They bury it. Spike unburies the dog and brings it into the bedroom. They eventually destroy some of them. Stu is mass producing them, and then they literally get in this like all-out war in the backyard where they're just destroying
Stu like
dozens
invents
of these.
it and then replicates it 15 times, like in one afternoon.
Well, and he said
it's horrifying.
That once again it shows that they have the money to burn on these things. But he talks about how he can do the first wave of mass production because he's not going to sell out to some conglomerate yet. And so yeah, he just sends out presumably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of IP out into the yard, right? And the kids destroy them all. And they're finally like, we're not going to live in fear. They destroy every single robot toy. And then at the end, the original one, which they like sent out into the street through a hole in the fence, Angelica brings back. Like she's not in the episode at all. But like, hey babies, look what I found. And they run and scream like, I found it neat. But this was a fun episode.
I think my favorite part of this episode is at the end when they're burying, or near the end when they're burying Mr. Friend. And they all look down, they're like, I feel like we should say something. Oh. And Chuckie's like, I agree. Hinkle, finkle, dinkle, do. Amen.
No, they said a hen.
A hen?
A hen. They all said a hen. Well, and so we brought up, they called him Mr. Fiend, which I think once again just shows how smart this show is, because that is something that a child could mishear, that's close enough to friend, but still totally fits with the episode because they are afraid of this doll. It's like an enemy to them. I think it's very clever and smart, and it's very simple.
I love that they just weave the existential dread into it. Like at one point, Lil just looks up and goes, boy, this is really one of those days, huh?
She did say that.
When the army of Mr. Friends is like marching towards them ominously.
It's such a good line, and that's not something a baby would say, but these aren't normal babies. Like these are babies that like exist in this like surreal world. Like it's weird. Yeah, that was a good line.
It was a good one.
All right. So the last episode we watched was the showdown at Teeter Totter Gulch and Muirland. Which do you want to talk about first?
Teeter Totter Gulch.
Teeter Totter Gulch. It's funny. I've been watching some Westerns lately for Remake Rewind, so having this little Western themed episode. I literally watched 2 Western movies. But this is the episode that, for whatever reason, I don't think it's the best episode. I don't think it's my favorite episode by any means. But for whatever reason, this is the one that immediately came to my mind when we brought it up. I don't know if this one was aired more often.
I think it might be the vivid imagery of getting gum in your hair.
Yeah.
As a child, that's traumatizing.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things in here. Like it does the Western motif very well. And that's something like we haven't watched a lot of episodes, but now that I think about it, there are Western episodes, there are romance episodes, there are war episodes, there's sci-fi episodes. They do a lot of like motif episodes.
Because a kid's imagination, you can do anything with it.
Exactly. And they did a really good job. Like I really liked one of the things was the beginning of this episode, Grandpa's walking into the park and they're talking about how far away this park is. But then they bring up these like concepts that are in Westerns, like, oh yeah, this is a new park that has a lot more wide and open spaces, that we can get sand that we can call our own instead of land that we can call our own. And they go and everyone's nice. They have like a little cantina with juice boxes in the park. And then the bad guy comes at no shadow time. Like that sounds like a kid's version of a Western thing, because normally it would be like high noon, which is essentially what this is.
Normally noon they eat a sandwich and then like passed out. Their little brains were fried from playing.
Yeah, so like they have the no shadow time, and then we have this bully show up, and she's the junk food kid. So once again, giving a nickname to like the outlaws, and Tommy stands up, is defeated, which is often what happens in Westerns initially. And then he tries to rally everybody the following day and like, hey, everybody, we're not afraid. And they're all cheering him on, like, who's going to stand up with me? And nobody does, except for Chuckie. And it's full on like a Western shootout. Like, she's got her candy. She's like throwing candy bars at them, throwing popsicles at them. She's going to blow the gum. Tommy loses his weapon, and he's reaching for his weapon. Can't get it. It was like a popsicle stick that he was going to use to pop the gum.
It's a high drama episode.
And then Chuckie, like, Tommy, throws him like a candy cane. Tommy catches it and then like pops the thing, and it defeats the bad guy. And I mean, it's just a absurd episode, but it really fits that Western motif. And there was like this really great joke the first time when they lose. The bully backhands Chuckie while holding like a Hershey bar. And then, like, the logo shows up on Chuckie's face, and he's like, I've been Brandon.
So good.
It's such a great episode. It's just like, I was laughing the entire time. It was such a fun episode. And then at the end, you know, he's leaving the park for the day because he's got to go take a nap. And everyone's like, when are you going to be back? And he's like, I'll be back when you need me. Or maybe tomorrow. It's just, it was a perfect way to do a kid Western. A kid's turn.
It's great. I mean, like, it's always fun when you can have a kid walk into a bar and order a apple juice in a box.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this one. And I think this one stood out in my mind more because I liked the episodes where they went to someplace out of the ordinary and had kind of like the guest star children.
Yeah.
I kind of like mixed it up a little bit instead of just having Angelica come over and terrorize them to have a different bully.
Well, and it's interesting too, because we do get these episodes where it really more explores Chuckie and Tommy's relationship, because Phil and Lil aren't in this. And in the Mirrorland episode, which we're about to talk about, they pop up, but they're barely in it.
Lil in a wig.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Exact same voice.
But it's just interesting to me that there are a lot of stories that are just two of the characters, like, for the most part. Like, it's a Chuckie and Tommy episode. There are episodes that we didn't watch, like there's a baby commercial, like a diaper commercial, that is just Phil and Lil. There aren't as many of those episodes, but there are episodes that are kind of bottle episodes for just one or two characters, which I think is pretty interesting for a kid's show to do that.
Supposedly, Captain Kirk and Spock's relationship is the influence behind Tommy and Chuckie's relationship.
Interesting.
I can't verify that, though. It's just from IMDb. Although, you know, what's kind of fun about having this set in Los Angeles is I can type in the address of where their house is supposed to be, 1258 North Highland Avenue, and it's 14 minutes away.
Oh, so they're in WeHo.
Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Because, yeah, Highland, that area is right around, like, WeHo, Los Angeles, Mid-City, Hollywood area.
It's not far.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, looks like Hollywood.
Yeah.
They're pretty close to the Walk of Fame, which is not
okay.
Cool. Apparently that's the first address of Klasky. Is it Supo?
Yeah.
Supo.
CSUPO.
Interesting.
Yep.
That was their first studio address.
That's funny. That's cool.
Good times.
So the last segment we watched was Mirrorland. And this one, I think, was probably my least favorite of the ones that we watched. But it was still fun. Like, it was just an episode of these kids talking about things that they have no idea about. And they extrapolate. And they basically talk about, like, an alternate dimension on the other side of a mirror. And Chuckie just kind of BS's, like, this thing that, like, oh, you can't get into the mirror because there's always somebody standing there, but there's a whole other world. And Phil and Lil are like, what are you talking about? It's like, you wouldn't understand it. And they're like, try us. He's like, it's very scientific. Like, try us. And then he just BS's things like, yeah, like, the fish swim or the fish fly and the birds swim, and like you wear shoes on your hands and stuff like that. And then they think they go into the mirror world, and it just happens to be that Dee Dee just got back from the mall and bought a bunch of antiques, and Spike gets into the antiques, so he ends up with the wig and Dee Dee's glasses. Grandpa ends up in a wig that's a big red afro, and Dee Dee is blind because she doesn't have her glasses, and she's wearing a tutu and tap shoes or something like that. So she's walking around funny. So they think she's a robot. They think Grandpa's hair is on fire, and they think that Spike is the dominant
Dee Dee
species.
wearing the tutu?
Because she pulled it out of the mystery box. So, and I thought this was another great adult crafted joke. So she went to an antique / frozen yogurt store. So it was Colden Oldies. And she has this big mirror, and she talks about how it's a French antique, and Grandpa looks at it and says made it in Taiwan. He's like, I didn't realize Taiwan was in France. Like, just calling her on the fact that she got duped by an antique store.
Grandpa didn't get sent to the front line in World War II because he tripped over the mattress and hurt his leg. And that's like actually a plot point in an episode.
And then he picks up a mystery box, and he throws like, you paid $15 for a mystery box? And he goes through and he sees the wigs, and he's like, oh, this is kind of cool. And she pulls out like the tutu, and it's like, oh, this is cute. I'm going to go try it on. And so the Chuckie and Tommy are the only ones who went to the mirror world. And so they experience all this weirdness, seeing the two adults and seeing Spike wearing glasses and a wig. So they get terrified. They run back through the mirror. And in the meantime, like while they're explaining everything to Phil and Lil, the adults just put their regular clothes back on, so it just looks like they're back in the real world. But they have this little moment where Phil and Lil, once again, this is not something you would think about as a kid, but they question whether or not their friends are who they say they are. Like, they're like, how do we know you guys aren't the mirror kids? And they're like, because the mirror kids live in the mirror land. Yeah, but you guys went into the mirror world. Why wouldn't they come back out? Prove it. And like, they asked Chuckie what's the scariest thing he ever did, and Tommy what the funniest thing he ever did, and they're still like, I don't know. But then Spike starts like licking them, like, well, dogs always know. We trust you.
Aww.
Like, it's very cute, but also like, it's funny that kids recognize that animals are very trusting, and if an animal trusts you, you're probably good.
I like that Spike was a full-fledged character in this show, because there are actually episodes where you follow mostly Spike.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we watched one of those.
Yeah, so I looked up what kind of dog he was. He's a Siberian tiger hound or something like that. Yeah. It's not a real breed, but I thought that was pretty funny.
I actually genuinely want to watch more episodes of this, and the more I think about it, the more I want to watch like the ones that they're creepy, or like include Cynthia, Angelica's weird Barbie doll that she's completely mutilated.
Yeah.
I like the episodes with Charlotte.
I want to watch more the Angelica-centric ones. I don't know why I didn't bring this up as one of my favorite episodes at the top, because I think we started talking about this episode as soon as we were getting ready to watch things, but the one where she breaks her leg, but she doesn't really, like, she pretends to break her leg, and Stu feels guilty, and he's just like her slave, and he's like, I've lost control of my life. Like, I really want to watch those weird dark ones that take a really weird twist and are just like weird.
So we were laughing about that last night. It's so vivid in my mind. Like when you say that phrase, I've lost control of my life, like I see Stu sitting on the kitchen
making
floor.
pudding.
So good.
I think it goes without saying, based off the fact that you said you want to watch more, that this didn't ruin our childhood.
Not at all.
I think I enjoyed this just as much as I did when I was watching this as a kid. Like, I'm not even giving this nostalgia glasses or nostalgia filter. Like, this was just a fun show to watch.
It's so good. And like sometimes sometimes the episodes that we watch that don't ruin our childhood, it still reframes it in a way that like we can't really look at it the same way. But something about watching this, I'm able to relive the experience of watching it as a kid. But there's also this whole other layer of humor that was completely over my head before.
It's like watching it again for the first time.
It's ideal. Like, this is the ideal, I think, #1 show that we've covered.
I think so. Like, I honestly went into this thinking this is going to be fun, but I honestly thought this was going to be nostalgia glasses, like the rose-colored like lenses. But it was legitimately a fun romp, and like going through the list, like
It's a good show.
We legitimately got overwhelmed trying to decide what episodes to pick. And we just kind of like went to default one of the ones we talked about at the top of the episode. You randomly found one and we watched the first episode. So,
however, we are not speaking to the later seasons, which I think we should visit in a later episode.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of a different show.
I think this will be one that we do the movie or we do post-movie episodes.
Yeah.
And see, but I think it goes without saying that this was a blast to watch.
Yeah, the show is even further elevated in my opinion. And I've always thought it was a great show.
Me too. Like, I honestly enjoyed this just as much as I did as a kid. Like, no nostalgia filter. I'm ready to watch more. What are we going to be covering on our next episode? It's a crossover episode. You know.
Wait,
we talked about this last night. Something that we had to spend $30 on Disney Plus for.
Mulan?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're going to be doing a crossover episode with Remake Rewind. We're going to be doing Mulan. So we're going to have our host of my co-host of Remake Rewind, Alex Polisi, on.
Alessandro.
We're going to talk at length about the first movie. We're going to cover the new one, talk about the differences, compare and contrast. And this episode will air on both Remake Rewind's channel and on Ruin My Childhood. So we're doing a crossover episode and it'll be fun. All right. Well, that was fun.
It was.
Oh, like you said, we'll probably go back and revisit Rugrats eventually. It'll probably happen sooner rather than later because while we were looking at facts and stuff about this one, we saw that there's a upcoming like reboot, revitalization, or revival of this show coming up pretty soon.
It's exciting.
We'll probably cover the movie or more episodes pretty soon. So thank you guys for listening. Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity.
Check out her YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you want her political stuff, check out her personal Instagram.
My personal is just going to make people angry.
And you guys can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MDXpods. If you want to support the show, we are on Patreon at patreon.com/MDXpods. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.